Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico CASA. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining us today for our latest guest episode of our Vigilant Voices podcast.
Yes, as always, we're glad that you are taking a few minutes to know more about the challenges facing children and families in order to ensure no child faces continued abuse, neglect, or trauma.
That's right. And for children who have experienced this kind of maltreatment, there is a chance that they need to be removed from their home of origin and placed in foster care.
Yes, and it's timely to talk about these types of situations because May is Foster Care Awareness Month.
And, you know, there are many ups and sometimes downs and challenges when a child needs to be in foster care.
And also misconceptions, right? Which is why we invited April Estrada, Director of Foster Care for Hope Tree Family Services, to join us today. So, welcome, April.
Yay, Hi. April.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We're glad to have you here.
So, you know, April, we try to keep our introductions brief because we really want to hear from our guests. And so we'd love to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our listeners and our audience. And so just tell us a little bit about you personally, professionally, just what's your story?
Sure. So I have been working in foster care actually for almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So that must mean I like it.
Yeah,
right?
I am I'm a proponent of foster care.
Yeah.
So I've been working at Hope Tree for 2 years.
Okay.
I have 2 adult daughters. One of them is actually a CASA worker in Salem.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Okay, what's her name?
Reagan.
Love that. Shout out.
Thank you.
She loves it. And I have another daughter who is at UVA right now. So my husband and I are empty nesters and treating our animals like our children since we don't have children. The fur babies. And, you know, continuing to advocate for kids in care and kids who aren't in care because, you know, foster care is not ideal. So.
That's right.
Exactly.
Very good.
Well, I love that. I didn't know you had that CASA connection, so I love it even more. That was a little bit about you, but could you also tell us a little bit about like Hope Tree?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So Hope Tree has been around since 1890.
Oh, wow.
It started as an orphanage. So, you know, back then the only place for kids was orphanages.
Right.
And over the years, that became obvious that wasn't the best situation. So Hope Tree has evolved to have other programs. We have foster care, obviously, but we also have group homes on our campus in Salem where young people live when they can't live in a family just yet.
Right.
We have a private day school in Salem. So for the kids who have special needs that need a more one-to-one situation. And, of course, we have outpatient counseling. We have family-centered treatment, which is essentially counseling in the home of a family who's struggling. And we also have family support services here in Richmond, which are for either families who have lost their kids to foster care or in danger of losing their kids to foster care or struggling with something in their home. It's a less intensive service, but just more supportive. Like, how do we figure out what's going on so that we can keep your kid with you?
Sure.
Right.
Oh, I love that you listed all that. I feel like, you know, we talk about foster care a lot from the foster child's perspective because that's who CASA is working with. But there's so many other people affected from it, the biological family, and the foster parents that you've listed all of those programs.
Yeah, totally. So I heard this, and we know this just from working collaboratively with you all as well, that, you know, Hope Tree does offer many different programs, right? And so you alluded to some, but outpatient counseling, maybe some, you know, academic alternatives. But, you know, April, you specifically work in the world of foster care. And so, you know, for our listeners who maybe aren't overly familiar or maybe who just might need a refresher or clarification, you know, how do you define foster care?
Right. So foster care is always designed to be a temporary situation for a child who cannot live in their birth home for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's typically a safety issue because the state will do everything they can not to put a kid in foster care. They do not want children in foster care.
Yeah.
So it has to be a pretty big safety situation. And they'll place the child in foster care to give the family time to rectify any safety issues that were impeding their ability to parent. So that might be substance abuse. It might be housing. It might be simply poverty leading to neglect. So social services works with those families to try to mitigate those barriers, while the foster care agency, which could be social services, but sometimes it's Hope Tree or someone else, places that child in a foster home and temporarily manages that situation for them, making sure they're safe and their needs are met until they can go home.
Okay. So, and, on the website, but also we've certainly heard this, is that, Hope Tree specifically uses this phrase, treatment foster care. And so could you maybe explain that a little bit more about what does that mean specifically?
Yeah. So the Department of Social Services in Virginia, they have their own foster families.
Right.
If they cannot find an appropriate placement for a child because the child has some type of special need, whether that be a behavioral issue, a learning disability, autism, a medical issue, something that requires a little more training from a foster family or support from an agency, they will call Hope Tree or another agency like us. We are licensed through the Virginia Department of Social Services, so we're, we all work together. But treatment means that the child needs specially trained foster parents and caseworkers who can see the child and support the family more often. So our caseloads are lower than social services and that type of thing. And then we are responsible for making sure the child receives treatment in the community that they need, whether that's counseling or occupational therapy, speech therapy, educational services, just meeting all those needs to work on the child's special needs while the family's working on their issues.
Yeah. But I love that they're still able, in that situation, those kids to still be in a family environment, though, which is really nice.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And you alluded to this, but, foster care isn't ideal, right? Like, we would love for children to be safe at home with their family of origin. But knowing that isn't reality, right? And foster care definitely fills a need in our community. What would you say are the benefits to the children and maybe also to the foster parents? 'Cause I feel like they probably benefit in ways as well.
They absolutely do. And I really would like to not have a job. I really wish foster care didn't. I don't relish the fact that I have this job and that I have to do this because kids can't live at home. But our goal is to place them with a family that can help them learn that there is safety in the world, that people can be trusted, because that's the part that's damaged during abuse, that they don't trust other people, and that will follow you your entire life, even when you're grown. So I think the biggest benefit to kids is they get that safe landing spot. And so even if they're only in a foster family for a short amount of time, they've at least learned that, okay, some people can be trusted, and they can take that back home to their families. And hopefully their families have learned that as they have learned to trust people to help them do what needs to be done. So I think that's the biggest benefit, just teaching them that's a lifelong lesson. And I think our foster parents, what I hear a lot is that I could never give them back. And what they find is they can, because they have seen what a difference it's made to the child long term, and what a difference it can make to their family if they take that back to their family. And they also learn that despite what's happened in the family, the kids love their family, and they begin to understand why that is, and they just have a deeper understanding of it's not black and white. None of this is black and white.
Yeah, there's like a perspective that comes.
And so I think that's the biggest blessing that they get from it. I think is their perspective change.
Well, and maybe to, further dive into that a little bit, there are a lot of misconceptions, about children living in foster care or the process itself at times. And, I'm sure you hear them. I think it would be really interesting for our listeners to hear from your perspective, what are the biggest misconceptions that you hear, and how do you in your work and our Hope Tree, as an agency, kind of work to address those? I
think one of the biggest things that holds foster parents back from becoming foster parents is being scared of working with the birth parents. They feel like they're scary people, and no one sets out to abuse their child. That's just not how it works. And abuse typically stems from other things, like I said earlier, substance abuse or poverty. So I think that that's the biggest misconception. They typically aren't scary, and they typically probably should have been in foster care themselves, or maybe were, and they needed things that they didn't get when they were kids. And so when they figured that part out, then I think that goes a long way to make them feel comfortable. Another one is that the kids in foster care, they're bad kids, or you can't help, they're too far gone. That's absolutely not true. They're just kids. And a lot of times when they are in a safe space and not having to fend for themselves, then they are completely different than they may look on paper. I've seen that a million times in my career. So they are just normal kids. They just haven't had the normal upbringing that maybe you had or your kids had. So it's your opportunity to offer that to them and see how that can change. I think those are the two biggest. There's a lot of other ones, I have to be married, I have to own my house, and those are not true. We're looking for a safe place,
Right.
a person who has time to
Yeah.
invest in a young person's future, and someone who let a lot of people be involved in your life.
That's
Because,
right.
like you said, it's a lot of systems involved. But
Yeah.
we're
You're
hopefully all
opening
working
your home,
together.
literally.
Yes. You're putting your home on a stage.
That's right.
Yes. And I think, I would throw one more in the mix, maybe. I hear a lot of people say, like, in thinking of becoming a foster parent, like, I could never do that. I could never become a foster parent, which I don't think it's true. I think the first step is to explore maybe whether this is right for you. Could you say a little bit more about what does make a great foster care? What should they be willing to bring to the table, maybe? Because you provide the training. And
we do.
And
We
kind of
provide
take
the
it from
training
there.
and support, and we match families up with experienced families. So they have someone to, get bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
I think that, we're just looking for people who have an interest in children, who like children, who want to make a difference in the world, because you are, who have, ideally, the best foster parents, in my opinion, have been through some things themselves, and they have weathered storms, and they know what that's like. And so definitely not perfect people at all.
Right.
That you've had some drama, for example, or your family's not always been the best, but you're currently in a place where you're emotionally ready, and you have a stable home and a safe home, and you're open to feedback and help, because that you do get a lot of that from not just Hope Tree, but everyone else. And so I think that just the actually willingness to learn about it is the best place to start.
Yeah. Well, April, as you may know, our vision at Henrico CASA is for all children to have safe homes. And that vision really does drive our work every single day. And, if you reflect and think about your vision for children in our communities, how would you describe that? What is your vision for kids?
I think my vision revolves mostly around permanency. I want children to have people. I want them to have people that they can say, these are my people. And ideally, that is their birth family, even if they can't go home to them, and maybe an adoptive family or grandparent-like figures. But adults who surround them and are their people. I think that's my vision. I want them to be safe, but I want them to feel permanently a part of something. So that's what we're always working towards.
Love that.
At Hope Tree.
We all need people.
And we
do.
use that. It takes a village all the time.
Right. It's absolutely true.
It does.
And kids in foster care are often people poor. They haven't had stable. There's a lot of in and out of people in their life, and then you take them from the only thing that they have had stability with, that they didn't know any better, that it wasn't. It was their birth family, and you try to force a round
like a
thing
stranger.
Here's a stranger for you.
Right.
You want them to have people, and so the outcome needs to be, who are those people, and what can they help you with, and who do you go to, and you're not alone. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
Yeah, and those people follow you into adulthood. Like you need your safety net of people. So that I love that you said that. With that kind of vision of having your people in mind, is there a call to action that you could leave us with and leave our listeners with, something simple that they could do to just be part of that village for children?
Well, absolutely, they could become foster parents. They could become CASA workers. That's what I encouraged my child to. She's not a child. She's 23. But if you can't be a foster parent, if you don't want to do that, you could be a CASA worker.
Right.
But also, if you know foster families, pour into them. If you notice things in your community, that's what I say a lot. Like, some families are just struggling because they don't have people.
Right.
Yeah.
So notice the families in your community who are struggling, who maybe need food, who maybe need housing. Like, reach out to those people. If you are a member of a church, have your church rally around those people who are struggling to prevent their kids from even coming into care. Like, because so much it's just things that they need that we could do as a community versus having to social services have to do it.
Right.
So, just pay attention to who's around you and what's going on with people, and be willing to step in where you can.
And just show up. We talk about that all the time, but just show up.
Show up. And a lot of it is just, we have people who donate things to Hope Tree or volunteer to beautify our campus. That doesn't directly impact a kid in foster care, but it does make it better for the kids who live on campus, for the people who work there. Like, any little thing contributes. I've had people write encouraging notes to our foster care workers. Oh my goodness, that goes a long way, because they have to do a really hard job too. So just anything. There's so many ways. So the call to action is, call me and I'll give you some ways. Like, You want to know? I'll give you little ways or big ways, like whatever you want.
I love that.
I've got some things for you to do.
Cool. Love that. Well, thank you so much, April.
Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico CASA's podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.